Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Politics here at the Hindu with me, Nistula Hebbar, where we unpack the news making the headlines in domestic politics. Now, this week, the Supreme Court referred a bunch of pleas seeking legal recognition for same sex marriages. This was referred to a 5-judge constitution bench for adjudication, and the Supreme Court said, while referring this matter to this 5-judge constitution bench, that it was a seminal issue and an important matter. The hearings will commence from April 18th. Now, all of this was done in the face of the centre's insistence that Parliament alone should take a call on this subject, the intricacies of which could impact, according to the centre's affidavit on the matter, how Indian society could develop henceforth. So this is an issue which both the Supreme Court and the centre admit has far-reaching implications for Indian society. Now, the battle for same-sex couples to get legal recognition for marriage under the Indian state has been a long one and has been led by activists in this space. Now, though homosexuality itself was decriminalized in 2018, same-sex marriages continue to be unacknowledged and unrecognized by Indian laws. Let's look a little bit at the timeline in terms of the legal battle that has been fought over the legal recognition for same-sex marriages in India. Now, earlier on January 6th this year, the Supreme Court transferred to itself various petitions seeking recognition of same-sex marriages, which had been filed in different high courts across the country, to itself. Now, the petitions filed so far seek recognition under the Hindu Marriage Act, the Special Marriage Act, and the Foreign Marriage Act. This was followed by a number of petitions being filed in recent years in various high courts for the legal recognition of same-sex marriages. Gender rights campaigners believe recognizing same-sex marriages is the next logical step after the decriminalization of homosexuality. Now, one of the earliest petitions was filed in 2020 in the Delhi High Court by Abhijit Iyer Mitra. He argues that the Hindu Marriage Act does not distinguish between heterosexual and homosexual marriage in its wording. To drive this point, he argues that the Hindu Marriage Act requires any two Hindus for a marriage. It doesn't say it requires a Hindu man and a Hindu woman. It just says any two Hindus for a marriage. Other petitions have also sought recognition under the Special Marriage Act, which is a secular law, also arguing on the point of the wordings. The reasoning is similar to the one which was cited in Mr. Iyer Mitra's petition regarding the Hindu Marriage Act, that there was gender neutral wording. Legal experts highlight that the Special Marriage Act, in fact, is more liberal than the Hindu Marriage Act with its wording. Listing the conditions related to solemnizing marriages under the Special Marriage Act, the law's section 4 says, and I quote, "A marriage between any two persons may be solemnized under this act." It says any two persons. It doesn't say marriage between a man and a woman. And it doesn't mention husband or wife in even the subsections containing the conditions. So, but the centre has taken an opposite view to what the activists want. After basically telling the court in the case where homosexuality was decriminalized that they had basically no opinion on this issue, and therefore there was no real objection to decriminalizing homosexuality. In the matter of recognizing same-sex marriages, the centre filed an extremely strong affidavit opposing the act. Now it says, the centre's affidavit says that while same-sex unions and non-heterosexual marriages are not unlawful, there is no recognition either. And there is no legitimacy despite decriminalization of homosexuality in 2018. Now I'll open quotes and I'll quote from the centre's affidavit. It says, "The institution of marriage has a sanctity attached to it, and in major parts of the country, it is regarded as a sacrament, a holy union, and a sanskar. In our country, despite statutory recognition of the relationship of marriage between a biological man and a biological woman, marriage necessarily depends upon age-old customs, rituals, practices, cultural ethos, and societal values. This was a 56-page affidavit which was filed by the Centre on March 12th. Now, the Centre also said in this affidavit that the fundamental right to life and liberty cannot include any implicit approval of same-sex marriage. The Centre also said that a special status which is granted to heterosexual marriages cannot be construed as a discrimination against same-sex couples under Article 15(1) of the Constitution or as a privileging of heterosexuality. This is because no other forms of cohabitation, including heterosexual live-in relationship, enjoys the same status as heterosexual marriages. So they say, and I quote again, thus it can be clearly seen that not every heterosexual union has a status at par with marriage. To fall foul of Article 15(1), there should be discrimination only on the basis of sex. It is evident that this condition precedent is not at all satisfied in the present case. Article 15 is therefore inapplicable and cannot be used to assail the concerned statutory provisions. So, and the Centre also in its affidavit argued that the fundamental right under Article 21 also cannot be expanded to include the fundamental right for a same-sex marriage to be recognized under the laws of the country, and also said even under Article 19 there is no concomitant right. Basically, they argued that under no law is it necessary for the state, the Indian state, to recognize the legality of same-sex marriages. Now, basically, it said that the centers said that the Supreme Court verdict in 2018, the only change that happened because of that is that persons of same sex can engage in consensual sexual intercourse without being held criminally liable under Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. So basically, they are arguing the exact opposite of what gender rights activists have been arguing, that gender rights activists, as I said earlier, have been saying that after the decriminalization of gay sex in 2018, the next logical step would be recognizing same-sex marriages legally. The Centre is saying that the only thing that the reading down of 377 of the Indian Penal Code has done is that it has removed any criminal liability attached to same-sex sexual intercourse, and it does not naturally follow that there should be a legal recognition of same-sex unions. Now, Law Minister Kiren Rijiju also, when he spoke to reporters outside Parliament on Monday, reiterated the government's position, and the RSS, which held its annual meet in Haryana over the last weekend, supported the government's view. So basically, the ruling party and its ideological mothership are firmly against recognizing same-sex marriages. Now, where does this leave the matter? As said earlier, the hearings on the matter will be taken up by a 5-judge bench from April 18th and will be an important judgment one way or the other. If the court says that yes, we recognize, the Supreme Court of India recognizes the legal right of same-sex couples to marry, the Supreme Court will be taking a lead in what I feel is will be a progressive judgment. If it doesn't, and if the matter goes back to the government and the Parliament over and above the government, then we can see this matter hanging fire for some more time. Activists have emphasized that the recognition of same-sex marriage is important for partners in the union, for adoption rights, legal property, inheritance, maintenance, and other kind of things that, heterosexual married couples take for granted, because they get, the moment you get married, you have certain rights of domicile, maintenance, property and inheritance, and also certain adoption rights. Now, it is a legal and social recognition of the union, and it is an important part of recognition of rights. Now, there seems to be a divide between what the ruling party thinks and, of course, what the petitioners feel is the next natural step after the decriminalization of homosexuality. Now, there have been many progressive judgments and legislations that have paved the way for society to play catch-up. because at this point I do want to disclose that I am in favor of legal recognition of homosexual unions, and I feel that to use the alibi that society may not be prepared to go through with it, to recognize same-sex unions or to give legal sanction to same-sex unions is a very tricky argument to make, because there have been several instances in India's history where their rights have been given, like women got the right to vote as soon as India got independent, and women's rights, the feminist movement and the women's rights movement was a different parallel trajectory. So we got the right first, and women played catch up. Society played catch up as far as empowering women was concerned. So, and on other hand, this is also kind of the judgment of society that the government seems to be making also needs to take into account that previous governments who have accorded not so progressive thinking to Indian society have had to pay. And the biggest example of that in the 1980s was the Shah Bano judgment and the legislation passed by the Indian Parliament, which deprived Shah Bano of the maintenance that the court of law had given her on a divorce, and finding in favor of the Muslim personal law board. So that saw a huge reaction from progressive Indians, and also the growth of the BJP can be traced directly to this kind of a backlash that society felt against the then Rajiv Gandhi-led government. So therefore, I feel these unions under the aegis of religious ceremonies have been on for some time. And I certainly remember them being reported ever since 1990s, 1980s at least. Now, will the court seize the day within this seminal moment, or leave it to Parliament, where the ruling party with a clear majority is not in favor of legal recognition of same-sex marriages? Now, that will be something that needs to be seen. Now, for all of these reasons, Indian society, I believe, is at the cusp of an important move. This is all I have for you this week. Thank you for watching.